The salty breeze carried the scent of seaweed and diesel into the small clapboard chapel overlooking Port Clyde's harbor. Jamie Thompson adjusted the collar of their faded flannel shirt, feeling the weight of 10 years pressing down like the fog that often cloaked the Maine coastline. The annual memorial service for the Carter family was about to begin, and as always, the entire town had gathered to honor the lost. Jamie took a seat in the front row beside Mrs. Higgins, who had been like a grandmother to the Carters. Her weathered hands clutched a faded photograph of the family, her eyes already glistening. "Hard to believe it's been a decade," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Feels like yesterday they were hauling traps with the rest of us." Jamie nodded, words caught in their throat. The Carter family, Tom, Mary, and their 3 children, Lily, Ben, and little Sophie, had set out on a routine lobster fishing trip in the summer of 2015. They never returned. The Coast Guard found their boat, the Salty Dawn, adrift 10 miles offshore, its nets tangled, engine cold, but no signs of struggle or accident. It was as if the sea had swallowed them whole. For years, Port Clyde had whispered theories, a rogue wave, a sudden squall, or perhaps something darker. Some said Tom, a stubborn fisherman, had crossed the wrong people. But no evidence ever surfaced, and the case remained a wound that refused to heal. Each July, the town gathered in this chapel to pray, share memories, and cling to fading hope for answers. Reverend Michaels stood at the pulpit, his voice steady as he spoke of resilience and the enduring spirit of Port Clyde. "We carry the Carters in our hearts," he said, "their love for this town, for the sea, for each other. We trust in God's plan even when it eludes us." Jamie listened, but their mind drifted to the cardboard box they'd brought, filled with mementos for the post-service gathering. It was a tradition. Each year, someone shared relics of the Carters, a hand-carved fishing lure from Tom, a quilt stitched by Mary, or crayon drawings from the children. This year, Jamie had found a stack of photographs in the attic of the Carter house, which they'd maintained since the disappearance. The house stood frozen in time, its creaky floors and salt-stained windows a shrine to a family gone. Jamie had spent hours sorting through the photos, each one a stab of memory. After the service, the townspeople shuffled to the community hall, where coffee urns hissed and the scent of blueberry muffins filled the air. Jamie arranged the photographs on a folding table, their hands lingering on each image. There was Tom, grinning in his yellow oilskins, holding a record-breaking lobster; Mary, her auburn hair tucked under a bandana, sorting nets; the children, Lily, Ben, and Sophie, chasing seagulls on the docks. One photo stopped Jamie cold. It was taken the morning of the Carters' last trip, July 12, 2015. The family stood on the pier, waving at the camera, the salty dawn bobbing behind them. But in the background, half-shrouded by morning mist, was another boat, a sleek, modern vessel unlike the weathered fishing boats of Port Clyde. Its hull gleamed, suggesting speed rather than work, and its presence felt out of place. Jamie squinted, trying to make out details. The boat's name was obscured, but its design was distinctive, with sharp lines and a radar dome. Something about it tugged at Jamie's memory, but they couldn't place it. Had they seen it before? Why was it there that morning? "Interesting photo," said a voice behind them. Jamie turned to see Alex, a childhood friend who now worked at the marina, his hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. "That boat doesn't look local. Any idea who it belongs to?" Jamie shook their head. "No, but it was there the day they disappeared." "Probably nothing, but it's odd." Alex leaned closer, his brow furrowing. "Wait, I think I recognize it. Looks like the one old man Jenkins used to own. Fast thing, not for fishing. But he sold it right after," he trailed off, glancing at Jamie. "Right after the Carters went missing." A chill ran through Jamie. "Sold it to who?" "Some out-of-town buyer, I think. A company, not a person. I remember because it was strange. Jenkins loved that boat, called it his retirement plan. Then, boom, he sells it and moves to Florida." "Do you know the company's name?" Jamie asked, their pulse quickening. Alex rubbed his chin. "Something like Coastal Development Associates. They were all over Port Clyde back then, trying to buy up waterfront land and fishing quotas." The name hit Jamie like a wave. Coastal Development Associates. 10 years ago, they'd pushed to turn Port Clyde into a tourist hub, resorts, marinas, condos, threatening the town's fishing heritage. Tom Carter had been their loudest opponent, organizing town meetings, rallying fishermen to protect their way of life. Could there be a connection? Tom fought those developers tooth and nail, Jamie said, more to themselves than Alex. He wouldn't sell his quotas or land. "Yeah, he was a hero for it," Alex replied. "Kept the town from becoming another Bar Harbor. But after he disappeared, the plans fizzled out." Jamie's mind raced. The boat, the developers, the timing, it couldn't be coincidence. "I need to look into this," they said. "If that boat was out there when they vanished, maybe it's a clue." Alex nodded. "I'll help. Let's start at the marina. Maybe there's a record of the sale. They headed to the marina office where Mr. Peterson, the harbor master and an old friend of Tom's, was sorting through paperwork. His weathered face lit up when he saw Jamie. Good to see you, kid. Here for the memorial. Actually, we need your help, Jamie said, showing him the photo. This boat in the background, Alex thinks it was Jenkins. Can you check if there's a record of who he sold it to? Peterson studied the photo, then nodded. Jenkins' boat, all right. Fast little thing, not practical for lobstering. Let me dig through the files. He disappeared into a cluttered back room, returning with a dusty ledger. Flipping through yellowed pages, he found the entry. Here it is. Sold July 14, 2015 to Coastal Development Associates. Paid in cash, no questions asked. 2 days after the Carters disappeared, Jamie said, their voice tight. That's too close to be random. Peterson raised an eyebrow. You think those developers had something to do with it? I don't know yet, Jamie admitted. But I need to find out. Back at home, Jamie fired up their laptop, the glow casting shadows across the Carter house's living room. They searched for Coastal Development Associates, finding a polished website touting sustainable coastal progress. But older articles painted a different picture. 10 years ago, the company had pressured fishermen to sell their quotas and land, promising jobs but threatening the town's soul. Tom's name appeared in several stories, his quotes fierce, "This is our home, not their playground." One article caught Jamie's eye, a town hall meeting where Tom had faced off against the developers. In the accompanying photo, a younger David Marshall, then a town councilor, stood in the background, his expression unreadable. Now the mayor, Marshall, had supported the development back then, arguing it would boost the economy. After the Carters' disappearance, the plans stalled, but rumors swirled that Coastal Development was back, eyeing Port Clyde again. A knock at the door startled Jamie. It was Sarah, a neighbor and friend, her fishing boots still damp from the docks. Saw your light on. You okay? Jamie invited her in and explained the photo, the boat, and the developers. Sarah's eyes widened. You think they were involved in what happened to the Carters? It's possible, Jamie said. Tom was their biggest obstacle. If they wanted him gone. That's a serious accusation, Sarah cautioned. We need proof. I know. I'm going to track down that boat's history. Maybe find someone who saw it that day. Sarah nodded. I'll help. Let's talk to the old-timers at the docks tomorrow. Someone might remember something. The next morning, Jamie and Sarah found old Joe, a grizzled fisherman with a beard like sea foam, prepping his boat. Joe, you were out the day the Carters disappeared, Jamie said. Did you see another boat, a fast one, not local? Joe paused, scratching his beard. Yeah, I remember it. Parked at the guest dock for a couple days. Left the harbor same time as the Carters, come to think of it. Did you see who was on it? Jamie pressed. Nah, they kept to themselves. But it came back later that day. The Carters didn't. Jamie's heart pounded. So it was out there with them? Yep, Joe said. Strange boat for these waters. Not built for fishing. Jamie exchanged a look with Sarah. This was the first real lead in 10 years. They needed to know who was on that boat and what they did to the Carters. Jamie's confrontation with Mayor David Marshall left them with a bitter certainty. He was hiding something. His quick dismissal of the photograph showing him on the CC'd, the sleek boat tied to Coastal Development Associates, felt too rehearsed, his eyes too evasive. Jamie's boots scuffed the wooden steps of Port Clyde's town hall as they left, their mind churning. If Marshall was on that boat the day the Carters vanished, what did he know? And why was he so eager to shut down their questions? Back at the Carter house, Jamie fired up their laptop, the salt air seeping through the open window mingling with the musty scent of a home frozen in 2015. They needed more than suspicions, they needed proof. The photograph from the memorial showing the CC'd in the harbor was a start, but it wasn't enough. Jamie decided to search for other images from that day, hoping someone else had captured the boat or its crew. They started with the Port Clyde Historical Society's online archive, a digital scrapbook of community life. Scrolling through grainy photos from July 2015, Jamie found a set labeled Summer Harbor Fest. The festival, held the day before the Carters' disappearance, featured boats decked out in flags and lights. One photo showed the harbor at dawn on July 12th, the morning the Carters set out. Jamie's pulse quickened as they spotted the CC'd at the guest dock, its white hull and blue stripes unmistakable. Zooming in, Jamie saw two men on the deck. One held a duffel bag, his face shadowed by a cap. The other, in a navy blazer, stood with his back to the camera, but his posture, broad shoulders, head tilted, matched the man Jamie suspected was Marshall. In the foreground, a fisherman mended nets, oblivious to the scene. The photo wasn't definitive, but it was another piece of the puzzle. Jamie called Sarah, their neighbor and confidant, and asked her to meet at the Rusty Anchor Diner. Over steaming clam chowder, Jamie showed her the photo on their phone. "Look at this guy in the blazer. Does he look like David Marshall to you?" Sarah squinted, her brow creasing. "It's blurry, but yeah, it could be him. He always had that way of standing, like he owned the place. Back then, he was pushing for that big development deal." "If he was on that boat," Jamie said, their voice low, "he might know what happened to the Carters." Tom was fighting coastal development tooth and nail. Sarah's eyes widened. "You think Marshall was involved in their disappearance?" "I don't know yet," Jamie admitted. "But he's not telling the whole truth. I need to find out what that boat was doing out there." "Be careful, Jamie," Sarah warned, her voice tight. "Marshall's the mayor now. He's got friends in high places, and if he's mixed up in this..." "I'll be careful," Jamie promised, though their resolve burned hotter than ever. The next morning, Jamie headed to the marina to follow another lead. Captain Reynolds, the retired Coast Guard officer who'd led the search for the Carters, had mentioned a logbook noting the CC leaving the harbor at the same time as the Salty Dawn. Jamie wanted to see if the marina kept similar records or if anyone remembered the boat's crew. At the marina office, Mr. Peterson, the harbormaster, was sipping coffee, his desk cluttered with charts and receipts. "Back again, Jamie?" he said with a smile. "What's on your mind?" "I'm trying to find out more about that boat," the CC, Jamie said. "Do you have any records from July 2015 about who was on it or where it went?" Peterson scratched his chin. "Guest dock records don't go back that far, not in detail. But I do remember that boat. It was here for a couple of days, then gone right after the Carters disappeared. Jenkins sold it quick, which was odd." "Any idea who was on board?" Jamie pressed. "Not really. They kept to themselves. But I think one of the guys was a suit, not a fisherman. Maybe a lawyer or something." "A suit?" Jamie's mind flashed to the man in the blazer in the photo. "Did he have a name?" Peterson shook his head. "Sorry, kid. It's been too long." Disappointed but undeterred, Jamie thanked him and stepped outside. The marina buzzed with activity, lobster boats unloading traps, gulls squawking overhead. Jamie's gaze drifted to the horizon where a new construction site loomed on the edge of town. Coastal Development Associates had broken ground on a luxury marina, a project that had sparked protests from locals who feared it would price out fishermen and erode Port Clyde's soul. A thought struck Jamie. In the original fight against the developers, Tom Carter's land had been a prime target. After his disappearance, the plan stalled, but now the developers were back, building on what locals whispered was once Carter property. Could the construction site hold answers? Jamie drove to the site, parking a safe distance away. The area was fenced off, with signs reading "Future Home of Port Clyde Marina Resort." Cranes swung steel beams, and workers in hard hats shouted over the roar of machinery. Jamie slipped on a borrowed construction vest from Alex's truck, hoping to blend in, and approached a group of workers on their break. "Hey," Jamie said casually, "I'm researching the history of this land. Wasn't this part of the Carter estate?" A worker, his face weathered from years at sea, nodded. "Yeah, I think so. Tom Carter owned a chunk of this shore. After he went missing, there was some legal mess and it got sold." "Who bought it?" Jamie asked, their heart pounding. "Some company out of Portland," the worker said. "Coastal something. They've been trying to build here for years." Jamie's suspicions deepened. If the Carters' land was sold to the developers after their disappearance, it suggested a motive. Tom's refusal to sell had blocked their plans until he was gone. That evening, Jamie visited the town hall to check property records. Mrs. Johnson, the clerk, pulled up the files on her computer. The land was Tom Carter's until 2015, she confirmed. After he and his family were declared missing, the estate went into probate. No will was found, so the court auctioned it in 2017 to Coastal Development Associates. "Who handled the sale?" Jamie asked. "A lawyer, Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Johnson said. "He represented the estate and the buyer." "Thompson?" Jamie's stomach twisted. The same lawyer had handled the CC'd sale. "Where is he now?" "Retired to Florida," Mrs. Johnson said. "His son runs the practice now." Jamie made a mental note to contact young Mr. Thompson but decided to focus on the construction site first. If the developers had wanted the Carters' land badly enough to kill for it, there might be evidence buried there, literally or figuratively. Under cover of dusk, Jamie returned to the site, their flashlight dimmed to avoid detection. The fence was easy to slip under and the construction zone was quiet, the machinery silent. Jamie's boots crunched on gravel as they moved toward a pile of excavated earth near the water's edge. As they scanned the area, something glinted in the dirt, a small, rusted object half buried. Jamie knelt and brushed away the soil, revealing a brass fishing lure, its hook bent but intact. Their breath caught. It was one of Tom's lures, hand-carved with his initials, TC, etched into the side. Jamie had seen him make dozens like it, but this one was out of place, buried in land that shouldn't have been disturbed 10 years ago. Heart racing, Jamie pocketed the lure and swept their flashlight across the ground. Nearby, a patch of earth looked freshly turned, unlike the surrounding compacted soil. Jamie grabbed a nearby shovel and began to dig, their hands trembling. A foot down, the shovel hit something hard, not rock, but something solid and unnatural. Before they could uncover it, a beam of light sliced through the darkness and a voice barked, "Who's there?" Jamie froze, their pulse thundering. A security guard approached, his flashlight blinding. Jamie dropped the shovel and bolted, scrambling under the fence and sprinting to their car. As they sped away, the guard's shouts faded, but Jamie's mind raced. The lure, the disturbed earth, what had they stumbled onto? And if Marshall and the developers were involved, how far would they go to keep it buried? Jamie's hands trembled as they clutched the brass fishing lure, its etched initials, TC, gleaming under the dim kitchen light of the Carter house. The memory of the security guard's flashlight and the disturbed earth at the construction site kept sleep at bay. It was past midnight, the rhythmic crash of waves outside a reminder of the sea that had claimed the Carters, or so everyone thought. Jamie knew better now. The lure wasn't just a relic, it was a warning. They texted Alex and Sarah asking to meet at the Rusty Anchor Diner at dawn. The lure, the boat, the developers, it was too much to process alone. By 6 a.m., the three sat in a corner booth, the diner's air thick with the scent of fried bacon and coffee. Jamie slid the lure across the table, its weight heavy with implication. "That's Tom's, all right," Sarah said, her voice hushed. "He carved those lures himself, always put his initials on M. Where'd you find it?" "At the construction site," Jamie replied, recounting the previous night's discovery and escape. "It was buried, along with something else I didn't get to see. The ground looked freshly turned, like someone was hiding something." Alex leaned forward, his Marina jacket creaking. "You think it's connected to the Sea Seed and those developers?" "Has to be," Jamie said. "Tom fought Coastal Development Associates harder than anyone. They wanted his land, and after he disappeared, they got it. That lure being there, it's not a coincidence." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "We need more than a lure to prove it. What's the plan?" Jamie outlined two leads, the lawyer who handled the Carter estate sale and the construction site itself. Mrs. Johnson at Town Hall said a lawyer, Mr. Thompson, oversaw the sale to Coastal Development in 2017. His son runs the practice now. If there's anything shady about that deal, he might know. And we need to go back to the site, see what's buried. That site's crawling with security now, Alex cautioned. We'd need to be careful. Tonight, then, Jamie said. Under cover of darkness. But first, I'll visit the lawyer. After breakfast, Jamie drove to Thompson & Son Legal Services, a small office overlooking the harbor. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, greeted by a young man in a crisp suit, Ethan Thompson, the lawyer's son. His smile was professional, but his eyes were wary. "Morning," Jamie said, adopting a casual tone. "I'm researching some old property records for a community project about Port Clyde's history. I heard your firm handled the Carter estate sale back in 2017. Ethan's smile tightened. "That was my father's case. I was still in law school then. Why the interest?" "The Carters were family friends," Jamie said, not entirely lying. "I found some old documents in their house, thought they might relate to the sale. Just trying to piece together what happened." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Let me check the archives. It's been a while." He disappeared into a back room, returning with a thin file. The Carter estate was complicated. No will, so the court ordered the land auctioned. Coastal Development Associates bought it. Was the sale straightforward? Jamie asked, watching his reaction. "I mean, with the family missing, wasn't it unusual to move so fast?" Ethan shifted, his fingers tapping the file. "Probate can be quick if there's no contest. The court declared them, well, you know. My father handled it by the book, but I remember him saying the buyers were pushy. Wanted it done fast." "Pushy how?" Jamie pressed. "Just eager," Ethan said, glancing away. "Look, I don't have details. My father's retired now, lives in Florida. You'd have to ask him." Jamie sensed he was holding back but didn't push further. "Thanks for your time," they said, pocketing a business card. As they left, Ethan's unease lingered in their mind. The sale had been rushed. Why? That evening, Jamie, Alex, and Sarah met at the marina, the sky bruised with twilight. Armed with flashlights, a shovel, and Alex's camera, they drove to the construction site, parking in a wooded area to avoid detection. The air was heavy with salt and pine, the distant hum of waves a constant undertone. Stay low, Alex whispered as they approached the fence. The site was quieter now, the crane still, but a single security light swept the perimeter. They waited for it to pass, then slipped under the fence, their boots sinking into the gravel. Jamie led them to the spot where they'd found the lure, the disturbed earth still visible. Here, they said, handing the shovel to Alex. Dig carefully. Alex worked quickly, the soft thud of dirt hitting the ground the only sound. Sarah kept watch, her flashlight darting toward any rustle. After a few minutes, Alex's shovel struck something solid. Got something, he said, kneeling to brush away the soil. It was a rusted metal box, about the size of a tackle box, its lock corroded. Jamie pried it open with a screwdriver, their heart pounding. Inside were plastic bags containing papers, yellowed documents, some smudged but legible. Jamie's flashlight revealed a letterhead, Coastal Development Associates. These are contracts, Sarah whispered, scanning a page. Land transfer agreements, but look at the date. July 10, 2015. 2 days before the Carters disappeared, Jamie said, their voice tight. And this signature, it's Tom's, but it looks wrong. Like it was traced. Alex snapped photos of the documents, his camera's flash stark in the darkness. There's more, he said, pulling out a folded map. It showed Port Clyde's coastline, with the Carter land circled in red and annotated, priority acquisition, neutralize opposition. Neutralize? Sarah's voice shook. What does that mean? Before Jamie could answer, a beam of light cut through the night, and a voice shouted, Hey! Stop right there. The security guard was back, his radio crackling as he called for backup. Jamie shoved the documents into their backpack and the trio bolted, scrambling toward the fence. Alex tripped on a root, his camera skidding across the gravel, but Sarah hauled him up. They dove under the fence as headlights appeared, a truck roaring toward them. Go! Jamie yelled, sprinting for the car. They piled in, Alex flooring the gas as the truck's lights filled the rearview mirror. The chase lasted only a minute, the truck slowed, unable to follow them onto the narrow forest road, but Jamie's heart didn't stop racing until they reached Sarah's house. Safe inside, they spread the documents on the kitchen table. The forged contract, the map, the term neutralize, it painted a chilling picture. They planned this, Jamie said, their voice hollow. They forged Tom's signature, took his land, and what? Made sure he couldn't fight back. Alex scrolled through his camera's photos, his face pale. We've got proof now, but they know we were there. That guard saw us. We need to take this to someone we can trust, Sarah said. But who? Marshall's the mayor, and if he's involved. Jamie's mind flashed to Captain Reynolds, the retired Coast Guard officer. Reynolds, they said. He led the search for the Carters. If anyone can help, it's him. As dawn broke, Jamie stared at the documents, the weight of their discovery sinking in. They'd stirred a hornet's nest, and the developers, or worse, Marshall, wouldn't let this go. But Jamie was done running. The Carters deserved justice, and they were closer than ever to the truth. The morning sun cast long shadows across Captain Reynolds' porch where Jamie stood clutching the folder of forged documents. The retired Coast Guard officer's cottage overlooked Port Clyde's harbor, its weathered shingles blending with the pine trees. Jamie's knock echoed and the door creaked open, revealing Reynolds, his white hair neat, his eyes sharp despite his 70 years. Jamie Thompson, Reynolds said, his voice warm but curious. What brings you here? Captain, I need your help, Jamie replied, holding up the folder. It's about the Carters. Reynolds' expression hardened and he ushered Jamie inside. The living room was a nautical haven, charts, ship models, and a large map of Maine's coast dominated the space. They sat at a worn oak table and Jamie spread out the documents, the forged contract with Tom Carter's signature, the map marked Neutralize Opposition, and Alex's photographs of the construction site. As Jamie recounted the past week, the memorial photograph, the Seaseeds link to Coastal Development Associates, the fishing lure, and the midnight escape, Reynolds listened, his fingers tracing the map's coastline. When Jamie finished, he leaned back, his gaze distant. These papers are damning, Reynolds said, tapping the contract. The signature's a fake, Tom's handwriting was bolder, more angular. And this map? Neutralize isn't a word you use for business deals. It's a threat. Jamie's pulse quickened. You think they killed the Carters to get their land? Reynolds nodded grimly. It's possible. Tom was a thorn in their side, rallying fishermen against those developers. Coastal Development wanted his land and quotas to build that marina. If he wouldn't sell. But how does the Seaseed fit in? Jamie asked. It was out there when they disappeared. Reynolds stood and pulled a logbook from a shelf, its pages yellowed. I kept my own records during the search in 15. Let's see. He flipped to July 12, 2015, his finger scanning entries. Here. The Seaseed left the harbor at 5:47 a.m., same time as the Salty Dawn. Returned at 11:32 a.m. No distress calls, no debris. But the Carter's boat was found adrift later that day. Someone on that boat knew what happened, Jamie said, their voice tight. Likely, Reynolds agreed. And I remember something else. During the search, we got a tip about a fast boat seen near Monhegan Island, 10 miles out. We couldn't follow up, resources were stretched, but it matches the Seaseed's profile. Jamie's mind raced. Who was on it? The marina records didn't say. Reynolds frowned. No, but I saw a man at the guest dock that morning. Not a fisherman too polished. Wore a blazer, carried a briefcase. Looked like he was giving orders. A blazer? Jamie's thoughts flashed to the photograph from the Harbor Fest, the man resembling David Marshall. Could it have been the mayor? Reynolds' eyes widened. Marshall? He was a counselor then, cozy with the developers. It's possible. Jamie's resolve hardened. I confronted him about the Seaseed. He denied everything, but he was nervous. If he was on that boat. Be careful, Jamie, Reynolds cautioned. Marshall's powerful now. If he's involved, he won't go down easy. I need to know what he's hiding, Jamie said. Can you keep these documents safe? Reynolds nodded. I'll lot them in my safe. And I'll reach out to an old Coast Guard contact, see if they can pull maritime records from 15. But you watch your back. Jamie left, their mind buzzing. Marshall was the key, but confronting him again risked tipping their hand. They called Sarah and Alex, arranging to meet at the marina to plan their next move. The docks were quiet, the morning's catch already unloaded, and the trio huddled near Alex's boat. We've got proof the developers forged Tom's signature, Jamie said, keeping their voice low. And Reynolds thinks Marshall was on the Seaseed. I'm going to his office, see if I can get him to slip up. That's risky, Sarah said, her brow creased. He's already on edge. I'll go alone, Jamie insisted. If it goes south, you two can take the documents to Reynolds' contact. Alex handed Jamie a small recorder. Tape it. If he says anything incriminating, we'll have it. By noon, Jamie stood outside the town hall, the recorder hidden in their jacket. Marshall's office was on the second floor, its window overlooking the harbor. The receptionist waved Jamie through and they found Marshall at his desk, papers strewn about, his tie loosened. Jamie, Marshall said, his smile forced. Didn't expect you back so soon. I've got questions, Jamie said, closing the door. About the Seaseed. You were on it the day the Carters disappeared, weren't you? Marshall's eyes flickered, but he leaned back, feigning calm. I told you I don't know that boat. You're grasping at straws. Then why did Coastal Development buy it 2 days after? Jamie pressed. And why was Tom's land sold to them after he vanished? I found documents, Marshall. Forged contracts with his name. Marshall's face paled, his fingers tightening on a pen. You're out of your depth, kid. Those developers were aggressive, sure, but I had no part in any forgeries. Then who did? Jamie said, stepping closer. Because someone on that boat made sure the Carters didn't come back. Was it you? Marshall stood, his voice low and sharp. You're accusing me of murder? You've got no proof and you're stirring up trouble you can't handle. I've got enough, Jamie bluffed, their heart pounding. The Coast Guard's pulling records. Witnesses saw you at the dock. It's over. For a moment, Marshall's composure cracked, his eyes darting to the window. Then he laughed, cold and hollow. You think you're clever, but you're alone in this. The Carters? They were in the way. Progress needs sacrifices. Jamie's blood ran cold. You're admitting it? Marshall's smile vanished. I'm saying you should walk away. Or you'll end up like them. Before Jamie could respond, the door burst open and a man in a dark jacket entered, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar across his cheek. Problem, boss, he said, his eyes locked on Jamie. No problem, Marshall said, regaining control. Jamie was leaving. Jamie backed toward the door, the recorder still running. This isn't over, they said, their voice steady despite the fear. Outside, Jamie's legs shook as they hurried to their car. Marshall's words echoed, progress needs sacrifices. It was as good as a confession, but the scarred man's presence meant danger was closer than ever. Jamie drove to Sarah's house, where Alex waited, and played the recording. That's him, Sarah said, her voice trembling. He all but said he did it. And that guy who walked in? Alex added. I've seen him at the construction site. He's no local. We need to get this to Reynolds' contact, Jamie said. But Marshall knows I'm onto him. We're running out of time. As night fell, Jamie stared out Sarah's window, the harbor lights flickering. The truth was within reach, but so was the danger. They needed one final piece of evidence to bring Marshall down, and they knew where to find it. The moon hung low over Port Clyde's harbor, its silver light dancing on the waves like scattered shards of glass. The air was heavy with the briny tang of seaweed and the sharp bite of pine, a scent that had once brought Jamie Thompson comfort but now felt like a weight pressing against their chest. They crouched in the shadows of the construction site, their breath shallow, the cold metal of the recorder in their jacket pocket a constant reminder of Mayor David Marshall's chilling words, "Progress needs sacrifices." The forged documents, the fishing lure etched with Tom Carter's initials, the sleek CC'd, every clue had converged on this patch of earth where the Carters' land had been stolen by greed. Tonight, Jamie, Alex, Sarah, and Captain Reynolds would unearth the truth, no matter how devastating. Hours earlier, they gathered at Reynolds' weathered cottage, its walls lined with nautical charts and faded photographs of lobster boats. The forged contract and annotated map lay spread across his oak table, its surface scarred from years of use, a silent witness to their planning. Reynolds had reached his old Coast Guard contact, Lieutenant Emily Carter, no relation to the family who'd pulled maritime records from July 2015. The CC had logged a trip to Monhegan Island, 10 miles offshore, the same day the Carters vanished. Its owner, Coastal Development Associates, had listed a crew of 3, including a consultant named David Marshall. "That's our proof," Jamie had said, their voice steady despite the fear clawing at their insides, a fear born of 10 years of unanswered questions. "Marshall was on that boat. But we need more to tie him to what happened." Reynolds nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight that cast long shadows across the room. "The construction site's your best bet. That lure you found, it's not just a keepsake. It's evidence. If they buried something there, we'll find it." Sarah clutched the recorder, Marshall's voice still echoing in her mind, cold and hollow like the wind off the Atlantic. "He knows we're close. That man at his office, the one with the scar, he's watching us." "We go tonight," Alex said, his camera slung over his shoulder, his face set with a determination that mirrored Jamie's own. "Before they move whatever's there." Now, at the site, the group moved with practiced silence, slipping through the gap in the chain-link fence, still loose from Jamie's last desperate visit. The security light was off, perhaps a stroke of luck or a sign of the developer's arrogance. The ground crunched softly under their boots, the gravel damp from an earlier drizzle. Jamie led them to the disturbed earth where the fishing lure had been unearthed, its presence a haunting echo of Tom Carter's defiance. Reynolds carried a shovel, his movements precise, honed by decades in the Coast Guard, his breath visible in the chilly night air. "Dig here," Jamie whispered, pointing to the freshly turned soil, its edges jagged under the moonlight as if the earth itself were reluctant to reveal its secrets. Alex set up his camera, its night mode capturing every move, the lens clicking softly, a mechanical heartbeat in the stillness. Sarah kept watch, her flashlight dim, its beam darting to the fence every few seconds, her posture tense, ready to bolt. Reynolds worked methodically, the shovel's scrape muffled by the distant rhythm of waves crashing against the rocky shore. After 10 minutes, the blade struck something solid. "Not rock," he muttered, kneeling to clear the dirt with his hands, the soil cool and damp against his fingers. A glint of metal emerged, a rusted anchor, its chain tangled around something else, something unnatural. Jamie's heart stopped as Reynolds uncovered a canvas bag, its fabric rotted but intact, the faint smell of decay rising like a ghost. "Careful," Sarah hissed, her eyes wide, her breath quickening, her hands trembling as she gripped the flashlight. Reynolds unzipped the bag, revealing bones, human bones, small and fragile alongside a child's shoe, its blue fabric faded but unmistakable. Sophie's shoe, the one she'd worn that summer day, its laces still tied in a clumsy bow, a relic of a life cut short. Jamie's vision blurred, their knees buckling as if the ground had shifted beneath them, the weight of 10 years crashing down. "It's them," they choked out, their voice breaking, raw with grief. "The Carters." Alex's camera clicked, documenting the grim find, his hands steady despite the horror etched across his face, his breath hitching as he zoomed in. Reynolds' face was stone, but his voice cracked, a rare fracture in his stoic demeanor. "There's more. Keep digging." They uncovered 2 more bags, each containing remains, likely Tom, Mary, Lily, and Ben. A rusted knife, its blade etched with TC, lay among them, Tom's fishing knife, a gift from his father, its handle worn smooth from years of use, a testament to his life on the sea. The evidence was undeniable, the Carters hadn't drowned in some tragic accident. They'd been murdered, their bodies hidden where their land would be paved over, erased from history to make way for a marina that would never belong to Port Clyde. "We need to call the police," Sarah said, her voice trembling, her eyes fixed on the bags, unable to look away. "Now." Reynolds pulled out his phone, its screen casting a pale glow on his weathered face, and dialed Lieutenant Carter. "Emily, it's Reynolds. We've got remains at the Port Clyde construction site. Human. Send a team and bring the feds. This is bigger than local." As they waited, Alex noticed a glint in the dirt, a small, waterlogged notebook, its cover torn but legible, half buried like a secret the earth couldn't hold. Jamie opened it, its pages brittle but intact, the ink smeared but readable under the flashlight's beam. It was a log, written in tight, hurried script, July 12, 2015. Monhegan Rendezvous. Carter family intercepted. Neutralized per orders. DM oversaw. Payment secured. The initials DM David Marshall sealed his guilt, a final, irrefutable nail in the coffin. Headlights pierced the darkness and Jamie's heart leapt, their mind flashing to the scarred enforcer from Marshall's office. But it was Lieutenant Carter's SUV, followed by state police and FBI agents, their vehicles' lights flashing blue and red, casting eerie shadows across the site, transforming the quiet night into a scene of controlled chaos. Reynolds briefed them, handing over the notebook and pointing to the remains, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what they'd found. The agents secured the site, their radios crackling with urgency, their voices low and professional, a stark contrast to the raw emotion gripping Jamie's chest. "Stay back," an agent told Jamie, but they couldn't tear their eyes from the bags, the weight of 10 years of grief and questions now laid bare in the cold, unforgiving dirt. By dawn, the site was a crime scene, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze like a warning flag, its edges fraying in the salty air. News spread through Port Clyde like wildfire, drawing fishermen, neighbors, and reporters to the harbor, their faces a mix of shock, anger, and resolve. Jamie, Alex, and Sarah stood with Reynolds, watching as agents arrested Marshall at his home, just a mile up the coast. His face, pale and defiant, flashed across news cameras as he was led away in cuffs, his eyes meeting Jamie's for a brief, searing moment, a flicker of something, perhaps regret, perhaps fear, but no remorse. Later that morning, Jamie insisted on seeing Marshall at the police station, needing answers, needing to look into the eyes of the man who'd betrayed their town. Lieutenant Carter escorted them to an interrogation room, its walls gray and cold, the air stale. Marshall sat handcuffed, his suit rumpled, his composure a fragile facade. He looked smaller now, stripped of his power, a man undone by his own ambition. "Why?" Jamie asked, their voice low, trembling with a decade of pain. "Why the Carters? They were good people." Marshall's lips curled into a bitter smile, his eyes avoiding theirs. "They were in the way," he said, his voice flat, devoid of the charm he'd once wielded so effortlessly. "Tom wouldn't sell, wouldn't bend. The developers needed that land and I needed their money. It was business." "Business?" Jamie's voice rose, their hands clenching into fists. "You killed a family, children, for business?" Marshall shrugged, a gesture so callous it made Jamie's stomach churn. "You wouldn't understand. Progress demands tough choices." Jamie leaned forward, their voice a whisper, sharp as a blade. "You're wrong. I understand loyalty, community, the sea. You'll rot for this, and Port Clyde will rebuild without you." Lieutenant Carter pulled Jamie back, her hand firm but gentle. "That's enough," she said, but her eyes held a flicker of approval. As they left, Marshall's silence followed them, a hollow echo of his defeat. The FBI raided Coastal Development's Portland office, uncovering emails, bank transfers, and contracts tying Marshall to the murders. He'd been paid handsomely to ensure the Carters' land was acquired, orchestrating their interception at sea. The sea seat had rammed the Salty Dawn and the family was killed, their bodies dumped on the construction site to be buried under the marina's foundation, a literal foundation built on blood and betrayal. Lieutenant Carter approached Jamie outside the station, her expression somber, her uniform crisp despite the long night. "Forensic analysis will confirm identities, but the evidence is overwhelming. We've got Marshall and 2 developers in custody. They're talking, trying to cut deals, but it's over for them." Jamie nodded, their throat tight, the weight of the discovery still heavy on their shoulders, a burden they'd carry forever. "What about the land?" "It's tied up in court now," Carter said, her voice steady, a note of hope breaking through. "But the town's rallying to reclaim it. Your friend Tom, he fought for this place. You finished his fight." That evening, Port Clyde gathered at the clapboard chapel overlooking the harbor, not for another memorial, but for a vigil, a moment to mourn and to heal. The pews were filled with familiar faces, fishermen in worn flannel, mothers clutching their children, elders whose weathered hands had hauled traps for decades. Reverend Michaels stood at the pulpit, his voice warm and steady, speaking of resilience, of the sea's secrets finally laid bare, of a community that would not be broken. Jamie stepped forward, holding Tom's fishing knife, its blade catching the candlelight, a symbol of the Carters' enduring legacy. "The Carters loved this town," they said, their voice steady, their eyes meeting those of their neighbors, each face a story of loss and strength. "Tom taught me how to bait a trap, how to read the tides. Mary shared her blueberry pie recipe, said it was the secret to a happy home." Lily, Ben, and Sophie, they were the heart of this place, chasing gulls on the docks, dreaming of the sea. They died protecting our way of life, and we'll honor them by keeping Port Clyde ours, not for resorts, not for outsiders, but for fishermen, for families, for the sea that binds us. The crowd murmured agreement, their faces lit with resolve, their hands clasped in unity, a silent vow to carry on. Old Joe, the grizzled fisherman who'd seen the sea seed that fateful day, stood, his voice rough but clear. Tom was like a brother to me, he said, his eyes glistening. This fishery idea, it's what he'd want. Let's make it happen. Mrs. Higgins, who'd been like a grandmother to the Carters, rose next, her voice trembling but fierce. I'll teach the kids to mend nets just like Mary did. We'll keep their spirit alive. One by one, others spoke, promises to volunteer, to donate, to teach the next generation the ways of the sea. Plans formed to turn the Carter land into a community fishery, a place where the town's children could learn to haul traps, where the legacy of the Carters would live on in every lobster caught, every boat launched. As the vigil ended, Jamie walked to the dock where the salty dawn's old buoy hung, weathered but unbroken, its paint chipped but its spirit intact. They touched it, their fingers tracing the faded letters, whispering, "We got them, Tom. Rest easy." The sea stretched endless before them, its waves carrying the Carters' memory home, the horizon a promise of new beginnings, a testament to a town that had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Epilogue, A New Dawn. 6 months later, the community fishery was alive with activity, its docks bustling under a crisp spring sky. The scent of fresh catch mingled with the tang of salt air, and the laughter of children echoed across the harbor as they learned to bait traps, their small hands guided by weathered ones. Jamie stood on the pier, watching the scene unfold, their heart lighter than it had been in years, though the ache of loss would never fully fade. Sarah approached, her fishing boots scuffed from a morning's work, a smile softening her face. "It's coming together, isn't it?" she said, gesturing to the fishery where a new sign read Carter Community Fishery, its letters carved by local hands. Jamie nodded, their eyes tracing the horizon where the sea met the sky in a seamless embrace. "It is." The Carters would be proud. Alex joined them, his camera slung over his shoulder, capturing the moment for the Port Clyde Historical Society. "This place, it's more than a fishery," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It's a symbol of what we can do when we stand together." Reynolds, now a volunteer advisor at the fishery, clapped Jamie on the back, his white hair catching the sunlight. "You did good, kid. Real good." Tom's looking down, smiling. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the water, Jamie walked to the Carter house, its clapboard walls still standing, a shrine to a family gone but never forgotten. They stepped inside, the creak of the floorboards familiar, the air still carrying the faint scent of Mary's lavender soap. On the kitchen table, Jamie placed Tom's knife, its blade now polished, a quiet offering to the past. Outside, the harbor lights flickered and the sea whispered its eternal song. Port Clyde was healing, its spirit unbroken, its future secured by the courage of one family and the love of a community that refused to let them go. The Carter story would live on, not in tragedy but in the resilience of their town, in the waves that carried their memory, in the fishery that bore their name, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring bond of a fishing village by the sea.